Hey, I'd like to share a few things out of Luke 7, where Jesus is speaking, actually was invited to a home of a Pharisee. And in that home, a woman with a checkered past comes in and basically anoints Jesus with oil, with her tears, wets his feet, and then there's an attitude that's had by Simon the Pharisee. And then as it progresses, Jesus notices that and goes into a little bit of a parable, follows up with that by bringing that home to Simon and comparing him to what the woman had done. And so because this is a little ditty, I'm not going to read the passage in verses 36 through 50. I'll trust that you will. But a couple key elements here. This was whenever these different areas, this is in Galilee, but these communities would have something called a Hobanum, which was a group of people that would collect to invite guests, honored guests, to listen to different ideas that they were bringing, usually within a Jewish teaching context. And so Jesus would have fit the bill to be invited to this Pharisee's house, to find out, these Pharisees trying to figure out who this guy was. And so Simon arranges this meal, and in a typical Eastern area, they would have a meal that not like in a Western sense. Like if Mikhail and I invited a group of 10 people over, we would have enough food and a little bit of extra for 10 people. But within that setting, you find that they would make food for at least 3 times that amount, because you would have the invited guests that would come in and they would sit on couches and they would recline. And then you would also have those who were not invited but could come in and just sit around the edges next to the wall and listen on into the conversations. And so Jesus would have been the one, would probably be the primary honored guest to be brought in. And it says a woman understood he was there, and she was there from the beginning. When you read the text, you find out that it has to match that she was there to witness what was to occur right here. And what occurs is that there's a lack of greeting by Simon to Jesus. A couple things that happened. He didn't greet him with a kiss. There wasn't water given for his feet, and there was no oil given for him to cleanse himself. These were very common within this culture. Hospitality was majorly highlighted, and it was viewed that way. And so, and a typical greeting would be, for us in the Western society, when someone comes to the door, we would get up and go and greet them warmly, whether it's a handshake or a hug, or probably not a hug right now with COVID. But we would offer them something to drink and bring them in and spend time focused on them. And so they had their own systematic way of doing these things. And these 3 elements, the kiss, the water for the feet, as well as the oil for the head. And the kiss would be, if it was equals, like rabbi to rabbi, it would be maybe on the cheek. If it was a student-rabbi relationship, the student would kiss the hand, but if it was somebody of lower class, maybe a servant to a rabbi or a master, that kiss would be the feet. And so none of these things were given per usual, per order, by the host, who was Simon, towards the honored guest, who would be Jesus. None of those were given, and this was all witnessed by this woman, who had like I said, a disreputable past. And so she comes in and she sees this. It's a major offense to do this in this culture. There's this whole issue of hospitality. I don't think we really understand it from our side, but a major offense. And so she actually comes in and sees this slap in the face and is put down by this Pharisee towards Jesus. And she takes her alabaster jar, which is really a flask of perfume, and for her trade of prostitution, very common to have that. She broke it and anointed Jesus with that, really making a statement. Hey, I'm not going to lean into this world of where I'd come from, into this prostitution. She gave up that. She began to wet his feet with her tears, and she wiped them with her hair. She let her hair down, which was, really within that culture, to let your hair down could only be done between a husband and wife in a private setting. To be done outside in a public setting was looked at as major taboo. Actually, a husband could divorce his wife for doing such, and it wasn't allowed. That gesture wasn't allowed. Simon responds. He sees this action, and it doesn't really dawn on him that what she was doing was making amends for what he didn't do, and so he has attitude. And you see this in verse 39, and quote, he says, if this man were a prophet. It's a very contemptuous way of beginning this phrase. He would know who was touching him, do these air quotes. He would know who is touching him. That's a very, it's a heightened language. To touch really was used in kind of a sexual content. And so Jesus goes in and asks a question that, is fairly obvious answer. Two debts, one pretty large and the other smaller. Who's going to appreciate it more? And Simon has issue with this, and he goes, well, I suppose, he knows the answer. It's the guy with the larger debt. He's going to be more appreciative. And what's interesting is Jesus doesn't go into all these little attitudes that are thrown at him and the disrespect that he's already thrown at him. Jesus doesn't respond to all these different inferences. I think I would have said, what do you mean, I suppose? I probably would have gone after that, or gone after the fact about the lack of greeting right from the get-go. And yet Jesus had already absorbed all that. He just leave it be. There is a time that he does really challenge Simon in a big way. But he also has this way in which he really engages the woman. And so if you look in verse 44, it says, he turned to the woman and he said to Simon. So he's not even looking at Simon, he's just looking at the woman. And there's this, obvious connection. And he starts telling Simon, you didn't do this, this, and this, but this woman had done this, this, and this. Everything that the woman did was in response to what Simon had not done. And he was just doing that comparison. And but what was interesting is that it says that she's doing this because of what had already been done for her, that she had run into this world of forgiveness from him. Prior to this event, she had known this, and her great love had shown this. And it says, but it's interesting because in verse 48, he says to the woman, hey, your sins are forgiven. But they were forgiven prior to that. But there's a reason why Jesus, I think, has to make that statement, because within that culture, the Pharisees would not even accept someone back into community, back into kind of a restoration moment, into the community, unless something had been stated. And Jesus makes the statement. He says, hey, your sins are forgiven. So there's this independent restoration, but also there's this Jesus wanting her to be understood that community, you have to kind of bring her in too. And so there's an incredible love for her, and her love for him too. And it's just a couple things. Jesus absorbs so much. He waits for the appropriate time to teach, and in such a powerful way. And this woman, exceptional to see her heart in the ways in which she responded to Jesus. Basically because of the hostilities that were shown him from this Pharisee who should have known better. So this is my short ditty, and I want to give credit to really a lot of teaching from Kenneth Bailey. He does a lot of great work with the Luke parables, and also John Mellencamp for the little song in the intro. And anyways, have a great day. See ya.